In this short exercise, we're going to take a look at the method that we've employed to make sure that the stools at this seating station are arranged in a circular path that mimics the profile of the seating station itself. We'll just zoom into the area to get a good look at what's going on. And of course what we could have done is created one single stool here and created a copy and manually placed the copies and judged it by eye. But I'm going to take a couple of minutes here to show you how the polar array tool could be used to make the whole process faster, more accurate, and therefore smarter. Let's just zoom back out. And I'll point out here that step 1 in the process requires me to find where exactly is the centre of that arc. And as with most things in AutoCAD, there's more than one way to achieve that, and I'll show you one way which requires a bit of construction work to be done initially. I'm going to go to the circle tool, and you might have noticed that beside the circle tool is a small drop down menu. And when we click on it, we find that there's a number of different ways to create circles. The standard centre and radius method is the most common, and your software is probably defaulted to that. For the purposes of this exercise, we're going to pick the 3-point method of creating circles, and I'll make sure that my OSnap is switched on with endpoints selected. As the name suggests, the 3-point method of drawing circles requires me to draw 3 points with my first click somewhere along the outside of the circle, so I'll pick this endpoint here as click number 1. Click number 2 I'll pick at the end of the arc, and then I can pull the circle around and resize it until the arc on the circle coincides with the arc on the seating station. And I think I'm just about there now, so I'll click my third click now. And if I zoom out, I'll find I'm finished step 1 of 2 in my construction phase here. The next thing I need to do is to locate exactly the centre of this circle that I've just drawn. And I'll go into OSnap and right click on OSnap and just ensure that the centre option is selected. And if it's selected, I can then pick the line tool, snap to the end point of the arc, and then I'll be able to pull down and pick up on the centre of the circle just there. And I'll pick that end point just to finish off, hit escape, and that's my construction complete. I've now identified the centre of the circle that creates that arc. That's going to make the process of creating the array much more straightforward. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to remove all of these small circles that represent stools, with the exception of the first one. Just right click and cut, and show you that the tool that's going to create the circular pattern of stools is the array tool here in the modify section of the ribbon. So I'll click on the array button, and up comes the array dialog box. The first thing I need to decide is whether I'm going to create a rectangular or a polar array. I can see in the preview window here that a rectangular array gives me a pattern of horizontal rows and vertical columns. It's really a polar array that I'm looking for. Having selected polar array, the next thing to tell the software is what is the object that I want to make a pattern of, and I do that with the select objects button here. When I click on the select objects button, the dialog box disappears and gives me the chance to select the geometry that I want to make the pattern of. So I'll click on that circle and tell the software that I'm finished selecting objects by hitting enter, and up comes the dialog box again. The software now needs to know where's the centre of the array. If I knew the x and y coordinates, I could enter them here, or I could pick the pick centre point button just here. Again, the dialog box disappears and gives me the chance to nominate the centre of the array. Well, that's down here. So I'm going to click on this point just here, and again the dialog box pops back up. I've got 3 different choices in this drop down menu of ways to create the polar array. And in this case I'm going to pick the second option, total number of items and angle between the items. So I'm going to get my array by nominating how many stools I want and the number of degrees between the stools. I'll try out 12 stools with 4 degrees between them, and before I commit and say OK, I'm going to pick the preview option to take a look at it, and I'm happy with most things about that array. It certainly follows the path of the edge of the seating station, that's absolutely fine. Although looking at it now, I think 12 stools is a bit cramped in that area. So I'll hit the escape key to bring the dialog box back up, and I'll edit these values. I'll go for 8 stools and 6 degrees between them. Preview that again, and I'm happier now that that's the result that I was looking for. So I'll right click to accept that array. Final step in the process is to make sure I remember to get rid of this construction geometry here. Just right click and cut. One of the attractions of the array tool is the enormous number of parameters that are available here within the polar array option and rectangular array option. If you're creative about it, you can get lots of interesting outcomes and save yourself a lot of work in the process.